All right, hello there. Research presentation. This is going to explain everything you need to have in your final presentation that you're going to be presenting in class coming up. So I'm going to explain this through you right here. If you have any questions, feel free to comment them down below with the time right through there, or you can go ahead and contact me and I'll be able to explain it a little bit more. I'm not going to show this in class. Just make sure you have this taken care of so that you have your entire time in class to work on formulating your own individual research presentation. Now, the purpose of a research presentation is, number one, you need to show your findings. So you're taking everything you found in your research and you're putting that into a presentation form where people can understand what your findings really are. You must do these three things as well. You must, number one, communicate the importance of your findings. So why does this matter? You need to clearly state your findings. You need to make sure it's clear so that people actually understand what you were talking about. You need to prompt others to give you feedback. This isn't just, here's what I found, sit down, listen to what I have to say, but you want others to give you feedback. Well, why didn't you try this? What happens if you would have done this? Giving you some questions, some feedback over your research. Now, the basic stuff you need to have is, number one, keep your background simple. Simplicity is key. If you go too complicated on this, it's going to be really challenging for you to give good information. It's going to be hard for us to follow, so make sure you keep it simple. Keep that background consistent as well. Make sure you're not switching around from one background on one side to a different background on another side to a different background on another side. Keep it consistent, keep it professional, and make it easy to read. If it's hard for me to read, if it's hard for the audience to read, it's going to be a challenge. Okay, you can see this right here, some different examples of stuff that's really hard to read. Okay, make it easy to read. Simple background, contrasting colors, easy font to understand. Additionally, as I said, your text should contrast with the background. Okay, so like right here, I've got a white background with black lettering, something that's going to show up easy. I'm not going to use a white background and a light gray lettering, or a black background and a dark blue lettering. I'm going to have something that contrasts and is easy to show. Less is more. Remember that when you do presentations. Less is more. I'm more concerned with what you're saying versus what you have put up on the slide. You need to use colors to emphasize and tie stuff together if you would like. You don't necessarily need to do this, but if maybe you're trying to connect two different things together, you want to make them the same color, that's fine. If you're going to be using color though on your in your font, use it for a reason. Don't just randomly throw colors up for no reason. Make sure there is a reasoning for that coloring. Your font needs to be standard and consistent, either Times New Roman, Arial, Calibri, or Rockwell, okay? Pick one of these four fonts that are all demonstrated right up on here and stick with that. I do not want to see anything like Comic Sans, anything non-professional up here. Make sure your presentation is in a consistent, standard, professional format as well. Your title slide needs to be a minimum of 44 points, making it large enough for people to see. Everything else needs to be a minimum of 22 points. You can go larger than this, but do not go smaller than that, simply because it's going to be hard to read if it's anything under 22-point font. You need to avoid text-heavy slides. I do not want sentences up here unless these sentences are quotes. Otherwise, you should have phrases, and then you should be speaking about those phrases. You should not have sentences, especially no paragraphs, but keep it simple, keep it phrases, and then explain what these phrases are talking about. No sentences unless they are quotes. Additionally, I don't want more than one main point per slide, and this is simply because it's hard to follow when you have a number of points on one slide. If that's the case, break it up, make multiple slides. Additionally, you can use multiple slides on the same point if needed. You don't need to try to cram everything into one slide. If you need to use 3 slides to explain a point, use 3 slides to explain that point. But make sure it's easy to read and do not overcrowd your slides. Additionally, make sure you keep your transitions. This is simply to keep the audience from reading ahead. It also allows you to keep your pace. You should practice this and know exactly what's coming up next, but make sure you use your transitions. Otherwise, you just have everything pop up at one time. The audience is going to be reading ahead and not really paying attention to you, which is a crucial and important part of your presentation. Now, the structure is going to be this right through here. I'm going to go over this in just a second, step by step. You can see the different things right here: introduction, background, research question, methods. You can read this all. I'm not going to read that off for you. Now, the first thing we need to do is the title slide. Okay, the title slide must be the same title as the title that is in your paper. I do not want it changing at all because this is a presentation of the paper. Make sure your title slide stays the same. You need to include your name, the name of your school, your title, and then the date of your presentation. Make sure you keep it in this order, just like that. Okay, an example of this one right here: How the Smell of Coffee Aids in Memory would be the title of my research project right here. My name is Matthew Larson. I'm at Bahrain Bayan School, and I gave my presentation on May 7th, 2019. This is how your cover slide should look. Notice the simple colors, simple font, stuff of that nature. The introduction, okay, the intro needs to inform the audience of the background information. Don't just assume that the audience knows what you're talking about. Make sure we actually understand what you're talking about, and that's going to be done through your introduction. You also need to state in this, why is your research important? Why do we care about what you're doing? State the importance of your research in your introduction. Bullet points are good to have on this as well, and simply use bullet points as a summary of this is going to happen, then this, then this, then this. Make us know where you are going with your presentation and why it matters. Background and literary review. First and foremost, you need to discuss the most relevant sources. Do not get up here and start citing every single bit of research you had. Don't start reading off your annotated bibliography, but discuss the most relevant sources that you used in conducting your research. You need to list the authors, and you need to explain what you learned from these authors. So pick 4 or 5, the most relevant ones you have. Tell me who the author is and what did you learn from this particular source. Explain that, list them out on the slide so that we can follow along as the audience. You need to explain what's been done already and how you are adding on to what's already been done in this field. So you're not just doing the same thing someone else already did. State what you did and why what you did is different. Next, you're going to go on to the research question. The question should stand alone, meaning you should have nothing else on here. Make it stand out, make it simple. It's going to, okay, making it simple, having something look like this. Research question, how does the smell of coffee influence one's memory? I've got it explained right here. It's short, simple, to the point. If I were to spend a little bit more time on this, I can maybe add a picture of coffee right here and a picture of memory, something of that nature. But it's going to be simple. It should stand alone. Methods right through here. Explain to me, how did you gather your data? You need to list all. Okay, so you're going to use random sampling. You're going to use whatever you've used, qualitative versus quantitative. Explain what you use when it comes to gathering your data, and you need to list every single bit of that. Make sure you mention any challenges that you face or you're going to be facing as you go through this. So make sure you explain any challenges right there as you're moving forward on this so that we as the audience can understand the issues that happened when you were gathering your research data. Findings and data, you need to clearly state what you found in your research. Make it clear so that I know exactly what you learned in doing your research. If I have in this and I don't know what you're talking about, that is going to be very problematic. You also need to let the data do the talking. You don't necessarily need to explain it right here. Just simply tell us what the data says. Let the data speak for itself. You're going to explain the data and why it's significant in the next section. If you have any graphs of anything of that nature, keep it simple. I don't want a whole bunch of distracting graphs. Make them simple to the point so we know exactly where you are going with those graphs. When it gets to the discussion point, this is where going to be a summary of the main point. You're going to summarize again the main point of your entire research, and you're going to state your question and then be able to answer that question. So what was your research question? How can you answer that research question now based upon the findings you've already had? Analyze and discuss the data from the previous slides as well. So this is where you're taking the data that's already spoken for itself, and you're going to explain why that data is important, making sure people understand the significance of that data, and you're going to analyze that in relation to your presentation and to your research. This you're going to talk about future research. So what else can people learn based upon your research? Okay, what else can people do in research when it comes to talking about what you've already learned? Explain this, take it farther right through here. Explain why you think someone else should continue to research this, okay? What questions came up as you started doing this you didn't have a chance to look into? Why do you think someone should look into that? Explain all the possible future scenarios that could come from your research. Next, we're going to talk about the references right through here. Do not include all the references from your paper. Simply include 5 key references that you used, primarily the ones you talked about in your presentation. So basically pick the 5 that were the most influential in you in writing your paper and put them in here and make sure you talk about them in the presentation as well. You need at least a minimum of 5. You can have more than 5. They need to be in APA style. APA style does mean they have to be in alphabetical order as well. So make sure you have correct APA style when it comes to the references. Next, you need a question slide, something like this. Simply include a final slide for asking questions, prompting the audience to ask these questions, and then go from there. If you don't know an answer to a question, admit it and just say, I don't know, and explain why you don't know that. Do not try to fake an answer. That is not going to help you here. Make sure you are not doing that. Explain what you don't know and explain why you don't know it. That is all for your presentation for now. If you have any questions, please comment them down below. Otherwise, get a hold of me. Best of luck and see you later.